Hello, everybody. My name is Donna Levinson, and I have the unbelievable privilege of being the Assistant Dean of Admissions at MIT Sloan. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are calling in from all around the world. This is such an important topic for us. I'm so very glad that you're taking the time to join us. I'm also joined by incredible colleagues who have information that I know you're interested in and who are also, um, share my enthusiasm for all of your interest and for ensuring for each and every one of you, you have the information that you need um, to apply to our programs, to eventually, if admitted, matriculate, and that you're excited to join us. You can see very quickly here some numbers that support that. This is the Sloan Global Community over the past 5 years. We have students from every continent. I know you have perhaps some concerns, you have some questions. And so I'm joined today by, first and foremost, David Elwell, who he actually runs our International Students Office, and he's going to share what the latest information is as it relates to international students and visas and other factors.
First of all, thank you all so much for joining us today. We are just tremendously excited to have you join us. Our main goal here today is to try to provide you with as much information as possible about how you can obtain the necessary resources that you need with regards to with regards to the resources that the ISO provides, as well as just information on how what you need to do in order to become an international student at MIT. Just to expand further on Donna's statement, at MIT right now, we have over 4,000 international students, graduate and undergraduate degree students, as well as non-degree programs from 138 countries around the world. So indeed, the world is at MIT, and we want the world here at MIT to be able to make sure that we are able to get perspectives from all over the world and to help solve the world's problems. That's part of what MIT's mission is across the board. So you would be coming to a place in Sloan that really is the embodiment of bringing together the best and brightest around the world in order to work together. And we're really excited, our office, to be a part of that. I have a few of my colleagues who are here joining us today. And I just wanted to put that. I'll say we will be passing on our slide deck information, so you don't have to try to copy all of this information down. One of the key pieces is we have at the ISO, we have staff who are assigned to each academic program as the primary advisor point of contact. So each academic program in Sloan has a specific ISO advisor who you will get to know throughout your time here, who works closely with you and your faculty, as well as the admissions office and student services at Sloan to be able to support you throughout your stay. So we look forward, if there are questions, we do have staff here who will help be able to answer some of your questions. What I wanted to do is be able to pass along just some access to resources quickly. And the best place to get sort of the information related to being an international student at MIT, everything from how do you apply for your visa, to getting the necessary documentation from MIT, to traveling and entering the United States and what to do when you first arrive. All of that information is right off of our main web page. I've put a copy of a screenshot of that page here. But if you go to our main web page, right at the top left, there's a section called Getting Started, and it's all for new students. So that's a great place for you to start in being able to understand what are the procedures and processes that we need to do in order to be an international student in the United States and at MIT, especially regarding visa documentation. So I wanted to highlight a few items from this, and I know there were a lot of questions that had come in regarding applying for visas and so on. And so one of the ways for you to get information right now to understand what the process would be to reach out and take a look at the U.S. Embassy or consulate webpage for the consular post nearest you, where you would be applying for your entry visa to come to the United States. So it's just usembassy.gov. Important to know, Canadian citizens and citizens of Bermuda are not required to get an entry visa to the US, but they still require certain documentation from MIT in order to prove your status as a student to enter the US in a student visa status. We know that there have been a lot of questions about visa processing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think the biggest questions have been about getting visa interviews. I will say this for students who arrived this past fall, while there was actually a pause of about 3.5 weeks of visa interviews for students when there was some change in vetting procedures, most of our students were able to obtain their visas to come to the United States. And we know that the biggest issue is just interview availability at consular posts. And we know that the U.S. State Department is aware of obviously the concerns of making sure that there's plenty of visa interview slots available. So even with a pause that lasted almost a month, the vast majority of our students were able to arrive on time to start the fall term. So that's really a positive thing. One piece we did want to mention that is new with regards to visa processing, which is not just for visa processing, but also for entry to the United States, is that the U.S. Department of State and U.S. Department of Homeland Security have introduced new vetting procedures to review social media accounts of any visa applicant, whether it's a non-immigrant visa like a student or an immigrant visa to the U.S. So for that, instructions that the embassies and consulates will provide is that you will need to make your social media accounts public prior to your visa interview. And that is part of the review process. They also need to be public for when you enter the United States so that U.S. Customs and Border Protection has access to that information as well. So that's something that's relatively new within the past year that we wanted to make sure you were aware of. Also, with visa processing, all applications are subject to administrative processing security reviews. So these are procedures that actually are not done at the embassies or consulates but by the U.S. Department of State and certain government agencies in the United States. Administrative processing can take a few days, can take a couple of weeks, can take a couple of months. So one of the things that we want to make sure that everyone is doing is requesting their documentation as early as possible. For students admitted to start in the summer term, you'd be able to request visa documents from the ISO as early as February. And for students who will be are starting their program at MIT next fall in September, um, you can request documentation starting in the beginning of April. We'll keep all new students updated as to when that information is available. Some of you may be students who are in the United States now pursuing degree programs or have recently pursued degree programs in the US in a student visa status. If your entry visa and your passport is still valid, even from that previous school, it may be possible to utilize that visa and not apply for a new one if it's still valid for when you're coming to US. So we ask that you contact your ISO advisor just to talk about that and see what the best plan is if you can use that visa or apply for a new one. It's also really important to stress that even with visa processing timelines and so on, it's very important to know that when you have to enter the United States in a student visa status in order to study. You cannot enter in a tourist status and start school and then change your visa status after that. Those are some things that we'll reemphasize as you get closer to the part of applying for your visa as well as arriving to the United States. So again, that's a really important piece of the process. There are some travel restrictions that are currently in place, also in the news, maybe known as a travel ban. There are certain countries that have been identified through a presidential proclamation. There are actually 19 of them that are currently subject to full restrictions on travel to the United States. Whether some have full restrictions as well as certain partial restrictions include student visa statuses. So I've listed the 19 countries here. Currently, those are usually due to factors such as security view procedures, security of government documents issued by the government of those countries. It also could be due to issues where the U.S. government indicates that those countries are not accepting individuals who are being deported back to their home country, and so there's some geopolitical issues there. We will keep everyone updated. There can be changes in past travel bans. We have seen countries come off of these lists. Um, we also are keeping track of any potential increase or additions to the number of countries subject to travel restrictions, and we'll obviously keep everyone updated as soon as that information becomes available. I think it's important for us to mention as we talk a little bit about government policies is that we see a lot of government policies that are talked about in the media but are not official. So one of the key components is even when there is lots of conversation about what the U.S. government may be doing or limitations on immigration and so on, we will be sure to notify all of our students and admitted students that when there are official policies in place that will impact. A great example is that there were conversations about a travel ban starting actually in November of 2024, and there was no travel ban published officially until June. So again, that's something that we watch very closely and we'll keep you updated on. There are also some other, I was asked, some other sort of federal policies that might, impact our international students. There's some new procedures about vetting benefit applications. So similar to or sort of out of the travel ban, individuals who are applying for certain benefits from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services may be subject to additional vetting procedures. They already require the ability to review social media accounts, but also applications for, let's say, change of immigration status or employment authorizations, including sort of F1 student optional practical training applications will be subject to these additional vettings if you are from any of the designated countries above. So again, we will keep you updated on that, and I'll also point out where you can take a look at what's currently in place. Another item, a recent guidance from the U.S. Department of State about visa processing. So this again may apply to you, is that the government looked to provide recommendations or guidance saying that individuals should apply for visas, have visa interviews at U.S. embassies and consulates in their country of nationality or residence, with some limited exceptions. Generally, that means your home country, and the consulate in your country is the one that has jurisdiction over where you reside, where your location, your city, your town may be assigned a particular consular post in your country to apply to. That's the best place to apply. There is some vague guidance regarding if you can apply in a country that is not your home country, or what they call a third country. So usually you have to be able to show that you have a status in that country that is not, let's say, a tourist. Are you a student in another country, or do you hold permanent residency status in that country? And if so, you may be able to apply at the U.S. Embassy or consulate there and not have to travel back to your home country. But there are no guarantees about visa issuance in that regard. So it may be, if you're thinking of applying in a third country, we'd want you to contact your ISO advisor. There are also certain countries where the U.S. government does not have consular operations currently going on. So a couple of examples include Iran and Russia. Therefore, the government, under this guidance, which is linked here, has designated other consular posts if you are nationals of countries where you cannot apply within your home country or country of permanent residence, where there are specific consular posts where they want you to apply to. So again, that information is readily available here on the slide deck that we'll provide, but also on the ISO website. Just some other things we're monitoring. I know entry visa length is of concern to students. So under policy, when you apply for an entry visa from the U.S. Embassy or consulate, if it's granted, you can be granted a single entry visa or a multiple entry visa. You can also be issued for anywhere as little as 1 month up to 5 years. And it depends on what they call reciprocity, which is the timeline or the similar plan. For example, if I was applying for a student visa to go to your country, the timeline in which that would be available. Important to know, the entry visa is like a ticket to get into the United States only. Once you're here, the entry visa can expire and you can remain and complete your studies. So as long as you get a single entry visa, if you're coming in to study, you can remain in the United States as long as you are a full-time enrolled student for that period of time. You're able to remain in the U.S. For that period. So that's important. There's some other rules. I have already had a prospective student ask me about a duration of status proposed rule. I want to indicate that that rule is proposed only. It's not in effect yet, but that rule may provide additional vetting procedures for individuals whose program of study in the U.S. lasts longer than a particular designated number of years, which has not been designated yet. So we'll keep you updated on that. There's also, I know there have been some employment questions. There are a number of recent U.S. government policies related to the primary U.S. work visa called the H-1B, Temporary Professional Worker in Specialty Occupation, the H-1B. And that's a lottery system where companies would need to sponsor you for a work visa. after completion of degree. And there are a couple of different components which we've provided links to. But for student visa holders, there is actually some other employment options, both during and after completion of degree, that are available to you before you'd have to think about changing visa to something like an H-1B, a longer term work visa in the United States. Very important, I would say, if you have questions about employment and what the options and opportunities are, to take a look at the ISO employment page. There's a menu specifically to employment. You can go and click on that and have access to the information that's available here. A key piece is there is the ability for an international student while they're enrolled to work on campus at MIT for MIT and paid by MIT, part-time while you are a student during fall and spring, and potentially full-time more than 20 hours per week during official vacation periods. And so there is the opportunity to do that. So we have some students who may have research or teaching assistantships or other on-campus positions that you can pursue while you're here in the US. There's also some off-campus employment authorizations. These have to be directly related to your degree field of study, but there are some very strict limitations here. Certain type of authorization that called curricular practical training that allows you to pursue an experience if it's for credit towards minimal requirements to complete your degree, or you're completing a required experience to graduate. So there is, for example, in the Masters of Business Analytics program, there's a mandatory capstone that needs to be done, and the curricular practical training authorization is used for that for F1 visa holders. There's also 12 months of what they call optional practical training, where students, even if they aren't doing it for credit or fulfill a requirement, it's still possible to apply for a work permit from the Immigration Service to be able to pursue training in your degree field of study. That 12 months total available to you is per degree level. And so anytime you use prior to completion of degree is deducted from that 12 months. And so many students try to save a good chunk of that time for after completion of degree, but it is possible to use it prior to completion of degree as well. There's also for J1 visa holders, which is an exchange visitor program, which some of you may be here. There's a student category. And so some of you may be on that visa. There is an off-campus work authorization called academic training, which is similar to the F1 practical training. And then also for post-completion of degree, after utilizing the remainder of your optional practical training time, that 12 months, for those of you in STEM fields, and many programs in Sloan are designated as STEM fields, you may be eligible for an additional 24 months of work permission under that. So 24 months in addition to the period of optional practical training after completion of degree. So there are some options here for employment and training, which many of our students utilize after completion of degree. I encourage you to go and take a look at our employment resource page. There are descriptions of the different types of employment authorization. We also have a couple of Canvas e-courses that you can take, and actually required to if you want to apply for that benefit. But there's some e-courses that you can take that synthesize the information that's on our website about a couple of the different types of work permission. And we're actually expanding and creating new e-courses that you may have available in the near future as well. So again, there is significant information about employment available on our website that you can review. I also wanted to mention, if you're thinking of coming to the United States and to MIT, we have a whole web page that talks about coming to the United States, settling in, especially if it's the first time coming to the US. There are a lot of resources here that may be helpful for you in settling in, not only to the US, but also MIT in particular. So we encourage you to take a look at the resources available here, including information about cultural adjustment and so on. A lot of information here. Your fellow students and alumni have contributed to the resources here. So you're also able to get a student perspective as well. So we encourage you to access that information. Um, I have just a slide here that sort of links to all of our sort of main sort of resource categories at MIT in the ISO, excuse me. And so feel free to reach out to them. Generally speaking, if you're reaching out, take a look at these resources first. And then if you have any questions, we want you to reach out to your specific ISO advisor point of contact. And we have a link to that here. There's also a link right on the main web page as well. So we encourage you to reach out. With that, I think I'm going to be passing the podium on to Rose. So Rose, let me pass it on to you.
Great. Thank you,
And I'll
David.
stop share. There you go.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's great to be with you today. My name is Rose Keating, and I am the Director of Career Development for MBA and specialty masters in the CDO. And just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we support international students. The CDO works with all students, so whether you're job searching in the US or looking at opportunities at home or abroad, and for entrepreneurs who are coming here interested in starting a company or meeting fellow co-founders, we work with all students regardless of your career goals. The US job market in particular has been very fluid the last 5 years, really ever since COVID. And our team in the CDO, which includes career advisors and coaches, and also our employer relations team, is tracking those changes and adapting our support to international students as the employment landscape shifts. And while the job search is challenging and uncertainty can definitely increase stress, when we actually look at our career outcomes, our international students are landing jobs at the same rate as our domestic students, which has been really positive to see, especially in the last year. The other thing that you might be interested to take a look at, I know there's students interested in all different degree programs here today. We will publish the MBA Class of 2025 Employment Report today, and that program can be a real bellwether for the market and graduate business hiring. And so it was really, again, positive to see the employment rate was the highest that it's been in the past 3 years, which has been a really strong just indication of market demand for Sloan talent. So moving on a little bit to some of the support that we have in place for our students at Sloan. Every program has a dedicated career advising or career coaching team where someone works with you really one-on-one to guide you through the whole exploration process and figuring out what's most important to you in your post-Sloan career, and really doing the analysis to figure out where the overlap is between your skills and your experience and what hiring managers are looking for. That team will also work with students to help you get market ready. So whether that's developing compelling career communications, helping guide you through how to answer questions about work authorization when you're applying to roles, or developing your networking strategy, which can be a big part of opening opportunities while you're in grad school. The career advising team is really there to walk with you step by step throughout the whole process. We also have different programs and workshops that we put on specifically for international students that will cover, conducting a U.S. job search, looking at networking in the U.S. through a cultural lens, and really just preparing you to have conversations with employers about your work authorization and how to navigate opportunities and really identify the ones where you have a competitive advantage. I'll speak to a question in the chat here which said, which employers consistently hire international graduates, and what differentiates candidates who receive callbacks, especially given visa constraints? What we found with our employers is that they're still very committed to hiring the best talent for their roles that they need graduate business students in. So whether that be someone that they need to sponsor or not, they're ultimately going to call the candidates back for interviews and give offers to those that they feel have the most relevant skills and work experience and will be able to add the most value. So there are certainly, a few companies, it hasn't been many, who may be stepping away from sponsorship or certain roles. Sometimes they won't sponsor for a marketing role, for example, but in general, most employers are willing to move forward with hiring international students when they have the specific skills that are needed for the role that they're hiring for. So that's a lot of what our team does, is help you figure out what is in your unique skill stack, what's the combination of skills that you're bringing to the market, and what kind of employers really need that. What else? Let's see. We also work, closely with David and Allison and the ISO team. We bring in immigration lawyers at certain points in the year to help think about post-grad employment options. And we also run a lot of panels with our alumni who were international students while they were at Sloan, so that you can hear their stories and ask them questions. The MIT Alumni Network is really incredible and can be a really key part of your career strategy in terms of getting information, getting support, and opening doors to opportunities. Lastly, I'll just touch on some of the resources that we provide in the CDO that are specific to international students. So we have an international student page on your CDO that I'll drop in the chat for you. That is sort of the hub for all international student career information. We give you access to a platform called MBA Exchange. You have premium access as a Sloan student, and that platform really opens doors to opportunities globally. It has job postings from 40 different countries and lists of global employers that are known to sponsor in different markets. We also partner with other top MBA schools in the M7 group, and we create and share lists with our students of companies that have hired international students here in the US and companies that have hired students for roles internationally, so that you can use those lists to build your target company list.